Welcome to Podsdale, where we explore the stories that make Scottsdale truly special. I'm your host, Holly Walter from the city's Office of Communication. Join me as we learn what makes Scottsdale tick. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. We had the opportunity to learn about Blue Zones Project Scottsdale in a previous episode. This innovative partnership brings together private and public organizations under a shared vision to support and build a culture of community health and well-being in Scottsdale. And we have two more Blue Zone Project Scottsdale guests on the show today to provide an update and talk about some of the things we're doing throughout the community. We have Maureen Aldrich. She's the Marketing and Engagement Lead for Blue Zones Project Scottsdale. And my other guest today is Danielle Anderson, and she is the Organization and Wellbeing Lead, also with Blue Zones Project Scottsdale. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you for having us.
Let's start out with you, Maureen. Can you just provide an overview of Blue Zones and what that's about for listeners who may not be familiar?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So Blue Zones is all about places where people live the longest and the healthiest, into their 90s and 100s without chronic disease. And Dan Buettner is the founder of Blue Zones. He was a National Geographic explorer and went around the world studying these places and found 5 places around the world. And then he studied for decades, what was it about these places? They weren't choosing to live longer lives, but they did just because their physical and social environments were set up in such a way that allowed them to make better choices, easy choices. From that, they figured out a way, what are the 9 common denominators that are happening within these regions, and how can we bring that to American cities? So Scottsdale has been identified to become the first certified community, Blue Zone certified community in Arizona. So that's really what it is about. It's a community-wide health initiative. And in Scottsdale, it's sponsored by Honor Health, the Cigna Group, and Goodwill of Central and Northern Arizona.
It's so exciting to be the first city in Arizona because this is really something that's happening around the world. And there's books and articles. You can find a lot of information online about this and really take a deep dive. So it's exciting that we are doing this here. Tell us a little bit about what you do with Blue Zones Project Scottsdale specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. So as marketing engagement, we're out there kind of doing this and telling everybody that we run into, more about Blue Zones and how they could get involved. The other thing you mentioned, there's books and there's all that type of stuff, but there's also a Netflix series right now. There's a 4-episode documentary called Live to 100 Blue Zones. And it's a great place where people can just learn a little bit more about the project as well. But in the community itself, we had our first community kickoff in January of 2024, and it was the first opportunity for us to share in Scottsdale what exactly this whole Blue Zones thing is about, right? So the local team since then has been working with committees in each one of our sectors, which is, we'll get into that more, but people, places, and policy. And we're working towards completing the objectives that are identified in our blueprint or a strategic plan that has been written and approved, and we're in the middle of the first year.
Exciting. And there have been a lot of projects and community participation events that have happened. Now, can you talk a little bit more about the certification criteria and how does that work?
So as I mentioned, there's 3 sectors. There's people, places, and policy. And as well as the blueprint itself, there's certification criteria to meet by the end of the first year, which is by the end of December of this year, and as well as at the end of the 4-year, 9-month project to become a Blue Zones community. So the criteria was really determined by the Blue Zones national team, and it's really based on population. And the criteria is designed to really create a tipping point in the community, at which time the positive environmental changes really become ingrained in the community, and then it does become easy for people to make the right choices and the healthy choices.
It's definitely a process. And we've done a lot in just the first few months since the launch.
We have. In fact, we were so excited to see 4,000 people attended the kickoff. So to see the momentum that has grown since then has just been phenomenal. There's a lot of interest, a lot of engagement, but there is so much more.
Great. 4,000 people for the kickoff.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
Share more about the engagement piece and how you work with civic and faith-based organizations. I know that's part of your focus.
There is a specific goal for the people side, and that's to engage 15% of people within the Scottsdale area that are aged 15 and above. So when you look at that age group, that's 32,288 people.
That's a lot of people.
So what does that mean to get engaged? It's more than just attending a kickoff. But what we like to do is help them dive a little bit deeper into how they can make their lives better. And we do that by several different things. One is taking a personal pledge. And the personal pledge is just a simple paper that is really a promise to yourself with simple check marks that you can choose, things that you could do that are simple, like leaving your shoes at the door to remind yourself to take a walk today. Or perhaps removing a television from your kitchen so you're not mindlessly eating. But it is really just a promise to yourself. So along with that pledge, we ask people to come to a Blue Zone story speech where you could learn a little bit more about what we're doing in Scottsdale. There's other engagement opportunities like joining a moai. A moai is a term that came from Okinawa, which is really a group of 5 or 6 people that we're putting together here in Scottsdale to get together for about a 10-week period, because there's a loneliness and isolation issue here in Scottsdale as well as around the country. And this is a method that has worked in many other communities across the country with Blue Zones. It helps people, identify with somebody else. So they have a friend they can rely on and call at the end of that 10-week period. So we've had a couple of walking moais. We also have purpose workshops that people can engage in. Purpose, again, if you have purpose in your life and you know why you wake up in the morning, it actually adds years to your life. You can sign up to attend a purpose workshop. It's a 90-minute workshop where we kind of walk through helping unlock some of your natural gifts and attaching that with volunteer opportunities. And then volunteering, I would say, would be the last engagement piece. We have all kinds of volunteer opportunities at Blue Zones and with other community organizations.
The walking moais, I've heard about that, and some of those take place at the senior centers, right?
We are going to be working with them, actually.
Oh, okay.
So since January, we had 2, one at the Civic Center, and then we also had one at the McDowell Sonora Preserve, and the stewards helped us with that. And it was great because people came out every single week, and they walked for half an hour, and they had a great time. Summer's coming, so we hope to be working with Scottsdale Fashion Square for our next one.
And the volunteerism piece, I know one of the projects out there as part of this was to work at our food bank.
Yes, Vista del Camino. We've had several packing and monthly packing opportunities, and we're also working with Desert Mission Food Bank, a few other food banks. We hope to do the back-to-school packing, and we're working with just other NOAA and other organizations that are in need of volunteers. A lot of times people want to volunteer, but they don't know where to do it. So we're trying to be that place where people can come and identify the opportunities that are available in the community.
What a great idea, because there are so many opportunities out there. And I love the idea of the pledge and looking at that, because it sounds like something that you can make very personal to you.
Absolutely. It is all about that. It's just reminding that there's 9 common denominators. There's 4 core principles, and it's really about connection. It's about eating wisely. It's about relating to people, and they're just simple things that you could do to incorporate it. And that's just a constant reminder, how can you bring the Power 9 into your life?
And now, how can people get involved and learn more about Blue Zones, Project Scottsdale, and some of the things that we are hosting throughout the community?
Well, our website would be a great place to start, and it's bluezonesprojectscottsdale.com. And on there, you will see an event page that lists all of the events, including volunteer opportunities that I mentioned that are happening now, and we continue to add onto that. There's also an ambassador training. So if you're super excited about this project and you want to do more in the community, we're looking for ambassadors to do exactly what we're doing, is to get out in front of organizations. If you know of an organization, a civic or nonprofit or faith-based, you can reach out to us too. We also have social platforms from Instagram to Facebook at BZP Scottsdale. So that's a great place. There's also volunteer forms and pledge forms. All that's on the website.
Great. And can you share the website with the listeners?
bluezonesprojectscottsdale.com.
Okay. Simple and easy to remember.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. And Danielle, we have you here. Can you talk about your duties to work directly with organizations and what you do in your role with Blue Zones Project Scottsdale?
Yeah, absolutely. So Maureen was talking about all of the great work happening on kind of the individual side. And so the work of places is working with organizations, so that's schools, work sites, grocery stores, and restaurants, as they are interested in showing off what they may already be doing, some of these, health and well-being best practices, and then also taking on some additional best practices as they make sense for their individual organization. And so that is what our team does. We work to support those organizations doing that, and we try to make it as easy and painless as possible for them. It really is about showing their great work.
It also shows that this isn't just about the city of Scottsdale. This is really something we are doing as a community. And why is it so important, for example, to have a restaurant or a grocery store or a school involved in this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, when we look at where people spend their time, right? Schools and work sites, we are spending at least 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday, in those places. And in those places, we have very little control over those environments. And so for the organization as a whole to take that ownership and to understand what it really means to contribute to health and well-being, that's really showing how important the people side of it is, right? And so that goes into the grocery and the restaurant too. We spend a lot of time and that is where we access the foods that we eat. And so if we can try to make that a little more accessible for healthy foods, then it just makes everything a little more easy.
So what's an example of something, for example, a grocery store could do as part of this?
Basically, there is, for each of the individual sectors, there's a certain number of best practices that they could choose. And within those, again, we want them to choose the ones that make the most sense. But so some specific examples would be to have some parking spaces that are noted outside that are usually the furthest from entering the store. That's a way to just get some extra steps in. Now, obviously, here in the heat, we might want to maybe not include that right now, but maybe starting in the fall. But we also want to have areas like we all know that with children's cereal, for instance, a lot of times those are located on the very bottom shelf to make them as attractive to the kids as possible. But we really want to flip that and have that kind of out of the way. So it's not the funny mascots or the pretty colors that are attracting them. Other things is having access to local produce. So maybe incorporating a little more opportunities there.
And something that we didn't mention, but this will take place over 5 years in total, right? And it's local leadership in the local Blue Zones project team. You are launching and implementing the Blue Zones Life Radius model. So what that does is help us make healthy choices easier in Scottsdale through these permanent and semi-permanent changes to the built environment, to policies and social networks, and as you mentioned, places. So when a restaurant or grocery store or school gets involved, is this part of that Blue Zones Life Radius?
Yeah, so it's basically, when we look at the life radius, we can look at that from the individual perspective and how they interact with the world around them. But we can also help to make that world around them a little more conducive to health. And so when schools can adjust their environments to have a little more movement opportunities, or if they could have a little better options for food, those are things that, again, it's not in the control of the students, but it's an opportunity for the place as its own environment to improve. And similarly with work sites. So we can have work sites where there's stand-up and sit-down desks opportunities. Maybe there's a work garden that happens, or maybe we're looking at catering, and then that way they're bringing in certain foods, which is also a connection for our restaurants that go through approval. So if they have catering menus, then we can kind of interweave these two places together.
Great. And you just had your first approved restaurant.
We did. And so Arcadia Farms Cafe is our first approved restaurant. And what's lovely about them is they have already incorporated Blue Zones inspired dishes. And they did it in such a way that it really wasn't changing what they were already providing to the local community, what they have been providing for almost 35 years. It was really just adding some additional options, maybe tweaking some so that, where somewhere it might say gluten-free, instead it has like a little fork and a knife, and that notes that it's Blue Zones inspired. And really that's plant-based or plant-focused, or the cheese is not dairy. There's options like that, whole grains for the bread options.
Well, we'll have to watch for more of that coming to our restaurants. And just days ago, Scottsdale Unified School District put out an announcement that Echo Canyon School became the state's first Blue Zones approved school.
Yeah, we're so excited for Echo Canyon. They really are the embodiment of what Blue Zones means. They provide all sorts of mindfulness opportunities and movement opportunities and social interaction. And the really great piece is the food curriculum that they embed within their regular curriculum. So they're giving opportunities for students to be growing and preparing and tasting foods, which is pretty unusual. It's pretty unique. And so they're just doing such wonderful things over there. And if you have some students that are school age that want to go, that's a great place to go.
Sounds great. I love the idea of the garden and their Chef in the Garden program.
Yes.
So they have a lot of, like you mentioned, learning activities to help support students to make those healthy food and drink choices. It's really important.
It is.
It kind of ties into something I've heard a lot, in terms of eating healthy at the grocery store, that you shop the perimeter. So it really struck me when you were talking about the children's cereals and where those are placed on the shelf in the aisle.
Absolutely. These the stores are laid out in a way to obviously make sales, and that makes sense. And so we really want to just have, fresh fruit and vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, things like that are just as accessible as some of the other foods that we automatically go to.
Right. Makes sense. And what are some of the upcoming initiatives we can look forward to here?
Yeah, well, one thing I do want to mention is we also have recently had our first approved work sites.
Okay.
And so our Honor Health corporate office, the Village Health and Spa, all 4 of their locations, and ArcSol are among our first approved work sites. And I think for each of them, they are champions within their own industries. But really what it shows is how much employees want to work there, how long they stay working there. And that really is a testament to the culture that they've created. And so I just want to make sure that they get out there too, because it's a big deal.
Oh, of course. Thank you for mentioning that. And then what are some of the things that a work site needs to do to become part of this initiative and shift this quest for well-being?
Yeah, so all organizations, whether they are a grocery, a restaurant, a worksite, or a school, they all can basically communicate at first some sort of interest. And so that can go onto our website or they can contact us by email. But then we basically sit down with them and we try to understand what they're already doing. So what are those great things that they're already doing? What are some of these best practices that they would like to take on? And we have that first meeting. And then it's about them providing validation to showcase all of those things. And so that process can take anywhere from 2 to 4 to 6 months, but it kind of depends on their readiness level and how much they want to take on. So that's all they have to do is just kind of work through the process.
Okay. And so I can assume that we'll have more work sites joining this list, and that's really exciting. So we'll go back to the upcoming initiatives. What can we look forward to?
And, similar to what Danielle was talking about regarding worksite organizational approvals, we also have participating organizations. And so those would be like civic organizations or faith-based organizations who may not have a lot of employees, but they have a lot of members. They have a lot of community members coming in. So the process would be similar where we'd come in with a checklist and they can choose some of the things that they want to then also offer their community members, and they would become a participating organization.
Great.
We would again promote them and help them offer free programming and things like that that would just benefit their base as well. So that's one thing that we'll be working on shortly, as well as the ambassador program that I mentioned. In addition to that, we're working on identifying transformational stories. So now that people have started engaging in some of this work and applying the Blue Zones Pledge and the other things that Danielle's talking about, there's people that are already transforming. Either they've lost weight because they started moving and changing their food intake, or they have connections through those purpose workshops, things that we've never had before in the community. We're also going to be doing a centenarian spotlight. So we're in the process now of interviewing some centenarians that are in our own community to find out what have they done? How did they do this? Blue zones or not? What are your tricks, right?
Right. What are your secrets?
So we're excited to be highlighting them shortly too.
That's so wonderful to hear. Anything else that we can talk about today? And we covered a lot of information, but anything that I may have missed or forgot to ask?
I would say that, our local team and our committees that are working at this are hard at work and super excited about this project. People, the more they hear about the project, they're very excited, but we're looking for people's help. Clearly, we need the community to help us achieve the certification criteria so our whole environment will be a place where we all want to be for future generations. It'll be just a healthier place to live all across the board. So please let us know if you want to get engaged. If you know of an organization, a worksite, a restaurant, grocery store, let us know, and we will get back to you as soon as we can.
And one thing, too, just to add is within our website, Maureen had mentioned earlier that our blueprint lives there. And that's a really great place to see because this is this community-wide initiative, but it entails a lot of objectives and goals. And so if anybody wants to spend some time reading through it, it is available and it shows everything that exists within the people, the places, and the policy work. And they can kind of see maybe where they fit in.
Great. And so I'll need to check out that Netflix series that you mentioned, but a final call to action is just everyone get involved, learn more about this. Well, Danielle and Maureen, thank you so much for joining us and sharing more. And I'm sure we'll be checking in again at some point to learn the latest with Blue Zones Project Scottsdale. But thank you for being here.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for inviting us. It's really important and we appreciate your help.
That's all for this episode of Podsdale. If you enjoyed listening, be sure to subscribe. You can find us on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Feel free to share your thoughts and experiences with us by emailing communications@scottsdaleaz.gov. We would love to hear from you. Until next time, this is Holly Walter signing off and inviting you to be part of the Scottsdale story.